I want to learn astrology. Okay, that's the topic of the video. I'm just going to share with you a little bit about what influenced me to study astrology and how I learned what I've learned. And I want to preface all of this by saying that there's tons of different ways that you can approach studying something like this. And of course, there's like courses you can take. It's not something you like typically study in accredited colleges, at least like in the United States, which is unfortunate, but I think that's the beauty of astrology. There's so many different ways that you can approach it. People approach it from a lot of different life experiences, and that's what makes it really awesome, because astrology is a language of symbols. It's a language of themes. It's a language of archetypes. And so there's never going to be a system of looking at it through X. If X plus Y equals, Z, it's not math. It's not algebra. It's not a quantitative language. It's a qualitative language that is best aided by a careful observation of the human experience, of life, of moments, of the sphere of life that's unable to sometimes be put into words or concepts. Your relationships will enrich your understanding of astrology, your friendships, your trials, your tribulations, your all of it. Astrology is a way of systematizing that and creating wisdom from that and seeing themes and patterns through these, what I think come out from a study of astrology is these universal cycles of human experience, both on the individual level and on the collective level. But say you're starting out and you just want like a starting point. This video is also going to be a little bit of just like book show and tell. So if you're done with that, this video is for you. I think one of the most powerful first books that I would recommend, and it actually seems almost like a little silly and like a little trivial, but let me preface it by this. There's tons of apps, astrology apps, there's tons of websites. Those can all be huge like learning tools. I think one of the most powerful things actually though is to put the technology away, put the computers away. It just gets to be really distracting and it gets to be a little bit of a crutch. You really need to develop your own vocabulary. You need to develop your own confidence in learning the concepts of astrology. And I think apps can be biased, they can be easy, they can bastardize astrology, they can simplify it. And I think like get some good books, get excited about the books, get into it, right? That's really the key, and that's how you're going to soak up the information. So one of the first books, it's actually like, I think this is one of the first astrology books I ever got. It's like super simple. It's almost juvenile. It reminds me of those kind of like I Spy books when you're a kid or whatever, but you're not going to learn all the nuances of astrology or all the deep stuff. You need to begin learning the language. You need to begin to learn what are all the planets, what does a chart look like, what are aspects, right? What are houses? What is an ascendant? What's a rising sign? The same thing, right? But just getting something that's easy and kind of fun to read and has pictures, super powerful. And look, if you go and look at what does, Libra and Venus mean, you're going to get like a one sentence explanation. There's not a lot of like nuance to unpack there, but it gives you just like the high level. And so just have fun with a book like this first and learn the language. Give yourself a foundation. This is literally where I started. I love this book. $15 when I bought it. This is a great starting point for a beginner. Once you start feeling a little bit more comfortable with the language, I would say probably the most influential astrology author that I've come across is a guy named Stephen Arroyo. There are two books that really resonated with me. One is this Astrology, Karma, and Transformation, which was the first book of his that I read. And then this one, I would actually recommend this first. This book is an absolute masterpiece. Astrology, Psychology, and the Four Elements, especially if you are someone that is like wanting to use astrology as a tool for greater self-reflection, self-wisdom, self-understanding, which is always how I've approached astrology. This book is really a masterpiece. These are books that you can easily get on Amazon. You can't find them at like a Barnes & Noble, but get them on Amazon. You can probably have them in a few days. Or if you have a local kind of cool new agey bookstore, I always prefer to go and support those, but not everyone has access to those. But Stephen Arroyo, like truly incredible. For things like learning transits, it's great to have a transit Bible. And so I think, again, the apps are helpful for being able to like, we don't need to like sit and calculate charts in transits by hand. That's a pain in the ass, and that's something that we can definitely rely on technology for. But again, the interpretations from those apps, don't overly rely on them. Try and, again, build your confidence and build your vocabulary. So a couple like really good classics. And honestly, there's probably a lot of apps that like use their descriptions from these texts, but Astrology, a Cosmic Science by Isabel Hickey, like this is a classic for just basic interpretations of birth positions, natal aspects, transits, and then specifically for transits, Planets in Transit by Robert Hand. This is like basically a comprehensive like Bible of transits. Another really helpful one to have in the library. Now, for getting into learning how to read birth charts, Stephen Arroyo also has a chart interpretation handbook. And so this kind of will like, this is another actually really good one. This might be one that I would actually put before the other Arroyo ones if you're just trying to learn like the infrastructure of a chart. This one, along with kind of like something really basic like this, will sort of get you started. I recommend this one a lot. Now, if you're really into understanding like the nuances of relationships and like relational astrology, which I love because I'm a Libra, I have a lot of Libra in my chart. I do a lot of like relationship videos on YouTube, but also on my TikTok. Liz Green's Astrology for Lovers is an absolute classic. And actually, I don't have, and it's a shame, I don't have any other Liz Green books with me, but Liz Green should be an absolute foundation for your astrological library. Her books, especially her book on Saturn, is like life-changing. Read that book from front to back, cover to back. So like Liz Green, this is great just for like relationship stuff, really insightful relationship stuff, but also like you start getting into the real nuances and you start thinking about Saturn and Neptune, and you start thinking about the outer planets and more astrology on a karmic, deep psychology level. Like Liz Green is your gal. One of my favorites, I'm actually reading this right now slowly, is called Barriers and Boundaries. And so if you're interested in kind of the overlap between astrology and like psychology, psychoanalysis, psychiatry, this is really incredible. It talks about the corollaries between astrological natal placements and DSM conditions or like Freudian psychological concepts. It's like really fascinating. This picture is actually of Meteora in Greece. It's actually like a super funny story. I had picked this book up like the beginning of last year, and I like kind of looked at this, but then like I didn't really know what it was. Like, ooh, it's like a cool house in a mountain. And my girlfriend and I actually went on a trip to Greece, and we actually went to Meteora, spent the whole day there, and we were like back at our hotel in the pool, and I was like reading this, and I still hadn't put it together. And I was like looking at this, and I was like, oh my God, we're right here right now. And she like made fun of me so much that it took me that long to like to realize that. It's sometimes a little bit of a symptom of astrologers, or at least for me, just having your head in the clouds, sometimes a little too much. Maybe that's just my excess air sign. But Liz Green, read anything by Liz Green, and you'll become a much more informed student of astrology. Again, going back to Arroyo, I love my boy. If we're talking about relationships, romantic astrology, relational astrology, synastry, which is, again, the comparison of astrological aspects between two natal charts. This is another fantastic one. Highly recommend. And then, I think one of the most important things to keep in mind is that There's a lot of astrologers out there. There's pop astrologers, there's old astrologers, there's TikTok astrologers. There's going to be a sort of a unique perspective that you're going to bring to astrology. And that's incredible, right? That the fact that everyone has their own spin on it is what makes it truly unique, and which makes everybody's interest and contribution and thoughts toward it super valuable. And I really want to encourage you to don't get too bound to thinking that there's a right answer. Get a journal, start observing transits, start writing down how you feel, start noticing patterns. Astrology is something that's best learned through trial and error and through experience and observation. That's how you get good. You don't get good. You can't, pop an Adderall and learn astrology overnight and cram for it. And you can't learn it in a month, and you can, but to really become a deep student, it requires just a lot of years of just being hardcore nerd interested in it and in getting passionate about it. You really have to feel the passion for it, and let that drive you. Let the thirst for self-knowledge, let the thirst for really understanding the intricacies of people and relationships and things, and in the overarching thematic archetypes that govern those. You have to really want to nerd out on those things, and that's how you are really going to get, and you're going to start drawing patterns, and eventually it all really starts coming together in ways that you didn't even really anticipate. In terms of just deep experience, personal experience, and really making sense of deep hard moments and hard outer transits, I go back to this one. This one is huge. So if you're going through a really hard Pluto or Saturn or outer planet transit, this book is so enlightening, and I think armed with some of the insights in here, it's actually extremely comforting too in a lot of ways, even in moments that feel really challenging materially or spiritually or whatever. In terms of trying to learn and understand astrological patterns that govern world events, sociological events, civilizational moments, astrology and the history of the world, this one is really interesting, Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas. This guy is kind of a hardcore academic. He has an interesting story where he was a big astrology skeptic, and then the oh so familiar story of the skeptic that actually tries to dive 2 feet in and really look at astrology with the goal of kind of disproving it, and then finding, holy shit, there's actually something to this. I found this to be a little bit less accessible or more of a difficult read or all over the place. I think I just innately, personality-wise, relate to more of the psychological focused astrology. I relate to that more. But this is another very worthy read. I haven't finished it yet, but shout out for Cosmos and Psyche. This is, when we were doing the Manhattan Project and building the atom bomb, what were this astrological phenomena that was happening then? Or what were the astrological similarities between when we invented the iPhone and Charles Darwin dropped his Origin of the Species? It's that kind of thing. So if you're interested in that, this is a good one for that. Anyway, hope this book show and tell was interesting for some people. If you have questions, let me know. Drop them in the comments, and talk to you soon.